Welcome to The Turnaround Artists, a podcast about turning things around when they don't go our way. Tune in each week to hear stories of impressive personal and professional turnarounds from a variety of interesting guests. This podcast was inspired by the recent happy turnarounds of its producers, Marisa Mitchell and me, Brian McFarland. We look forward to speaking with you. Welcome to episode 5 of The Turnaround Artists. My guest today has a very powerful personal story to share. She recently embarked on a solo walk across America to raise awareness for mental fitness. She's been a great friend and neighbor for over 10 years. Leisa Aras, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate you giving me a platform to talk about this important cause on.
Oh, you are very, very welcome. And you are dialing in from Tucson, Arizona.
I am. It's been a long walk so far. I started in Los Angeles in Irvine-ish area, Orange County, because of the fires. I had to delay a couple of days, but I've been walking since the 10th of January. Been walking all the way to Tucson, Arizona so far.
Today's subject is a really, really important one to us all. And thankfully, Lisa's going to help raise the awareness of this subject because it's so important in these trying times. And today's subject is mental illness. And so I will really stay out of the way. And with that introduction, Lisa, let you take it away and share your story.
So yeah, in 2008, my children's father and husband committed suicide. And we had been trying to navigate the mental health system for a few years up until that point with struggles. There was not a lot of support. It was prohibitively expensive. It was overwhelming to try and find therapists, programs, all sorts of things. And just navigating that. As I'm from Australia, I didn't have any family here. His family weren't here, and we were doing it by ourselves with little kids. So when he passed away, my children were only 6 and 7, and a lot of the aftermath that came from that was the questions: how do you deal with this? And today I want to change the narrative from mental illness to mental fitness. I want us to start talking about what we do to maintain our mental fitness, to start encouraging positive, open communication, positive conversations with family and friends. It's so much easier to talk to somebody about something that's positive than something that's negative. So if we can change the narrative a little bit from mental illness to mental fitness and talk about what we do to maintain that, I feel like we're already a step ahead. And suicide, having those conversations. Alex had attempted suicide 5 times, and the fifth
Wow.
time he passed. So it wasn't something that, yes, it's still always a shock and it's always a surprise. You never actually really truly know what's going on in somebody's mind when they pass away from suicide unless they leave a detailed note, which isn't always the case. But how do you have those conversations when that person's not mentally in a place to be able to talk about it?
Yeah.
And for me, talking to people about it since then has been more about being a safe space for people
Mm-hmm.
to have those conversations. I remember somebody made a comment on Facebook one time about, I can't remember whether it was Kate Spade or Anthony Bourdain, but a famous person committing suicide. And they were like, oh, that's so selfish, and that's so fucked up and so messed up, and I can't believe that they would do that. And it's like, you don't know. You don't know what that person's going through. And now you've just advertised to every single person in your family that you're judgmental about suicide. Not going to talk to you. They're not going to have those conversations with you. So to me, it's just about maybe us teaching each other how to have that empathetic conversation, how to be a safe space for our loved ones to go to,
Yeah.
um, and making sure that our kids learn how to have those conversations. I've
Yeah.
met people who've got 8-year-olds who have committed suicide.
Oh. Well,
So
Lisa,
yeah,
first off, my deepest compassion to you. I can't even imagine. I don't think anyone could say they can imagine. Each one is so individual.
Hmm.
What that was like
Yeah.
for anyone, but then especially to suddenly, become a single mom, and after trying to help, I really love the narrative of the mental fitness because it changes it from a negative to a positive and takes away a little bit of the stigma because so many people are feeling this, and we can only imagine how dark someone's life must be.
Right.
That seems the only option.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met somebody who is born with something like schizophrenia or bipolar or borderline personality disorder, all of them thousands of diagnoses that are out there, even severe depression and anxiety, who are really excited about having been born with that. I don't know anybody who's got that. And yet we treat them like it's something that's their fault, that's something that they chose in their life. And that's just not the case. It's like I always make a point that if I see somebody who's disabled, I will look them in the eye and smile and say hello because everybody else is avoiding them. And I feel like mental health is the same way, that we've got to that point where we just don't talk about it. We don't acknowledge it. We pretend it doesn't exist. And that's why people don't talk about it, because they're feeling judged.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and it's like, well, you nobody chose that, you know. Alex's mom was bipolar, and I didn't know that before we got married. I didn't know that when we had children. That wasn't something that I learned until my son was born, and he's now 23, turning 24. So when you come into a family like that, there's so many things that you can learn to be able to say, oh, okay, this might be a trigger. He wasn't presenting any symptoms of bipolar or anything like that until, later on in our
Mm.
relationship. Something triggered him. And, I will definitely get into my journey as part of my documentary when I do it. But his journey, it was triggered. He wasn't acting that way for a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah,
But now knowing that his mother was bipolar and on lithium, now I have to make sure, okay, are my kids okay?
yeah. What were the questions you're having to go through this yourself, and then you've
Hmm.
got two young children who are asking their mom what happened. So,
Yeah.
how did you deal with that?
Oof. I didn't cry for 2 years. I got it initially, and for 2 years, I just was like, okay, I've just got to get through this. I've just got to survive. I just have to make sure the kids are okay. Oh, it makes me teary just thinking about it. I avoided it for a really long time. And then I had to go past his graves site all the time, going back and forth to places. And I just like, I can't do this anymore because I had no answers. So for me, it was about making sure that they were safe and okay. And I didn't tell them much about why he passed. Just that he had passed away, and that it was his choice, and that he was okay now and he wasn't hurting anymore. The kind of the same conversation you have with people in the beginning when you don't know anything about suicide because it's so new to you, that you sort of do that whole they're not suffering anymore. But you don't realize the people you leave behind who are suffering and what they're going through. And I think that's what hurts the most, is how do we keep that communication going? And how do you tell a child? They were 6 and 7.
Yeah,
So I didn't until they're a little older, and then I explained what suicide was, and I was kind about it as far as, it's somebody has a choice, and that's what they chose to do, and daddy was sad and he was hurting, and he chose to do that. You always get all the questions from kids like, well, didn't he love us? Didn't he want us to, why couldn't we save him? And I don't have answers for that except yes, he loved you. But sometimes people are in so much pain they don't see love anymore.
I have to say, knowing your children, they are two of the most incredible people on the planet. That's no surprise.
Thank
So a
you.
testament to you that you did that all by yourself. So getting back to the topic of changing the narrative, there's an organization called Shatterproof trying to change the narrative about addiction in a similar way to make it okay to talk about.
That's just the most important part, is changing that narrative. And again, making people feel safe in your space to have those conversations. And particularly men, men are the ones who tend to suffer the most in silence. And it's been very surprising to me that women are the ones who are not having these conversations with me here, that men are definitely opening up a lot more. There's a man and a woman that stopped me yesterday on my walk, and they saw my big sign on my push cart that said LA to New York, and they asked about it, and I told them what I was doing. And I said, yeah, I'm walking from Los Angeles to New York City and talking about mental fitness and suicide awareness. And he was the one that actually started the conversation. And then she joined in. But he was the one that's like, yeah, you never know when somebody's suffering. And I'm like, and that's so sad that we never know. It's always like everybody's like, oh, we didn't know. Well,
Yeah.
let's be that safe space so that people can know.
I'm going to get into a very wonderful plug of what you're doing, and then have you elaborate on it. So
Okay.
Lisa let me know. We have a WhatsApp chat in our building, and she let me know a short while ago. She's an amazingly successful real estate agent in New York City, which is one of the most cutthroat businesses on the planet. I got my real estate license and I quickly got out of the business, so I couldn't imagine
And
how.
I have retired from real estate myself, and have wonderful team members who have continued on in my place. But
I can.
yeah,
I,
it's a tough industry. That's a
I
mental
know
challenge, that one.
that's a mental challenge. It needs a
Yeah.
lot of mental fitness, and I can only
Yeah.
imagine how great they are with you as a coach. So then Lisa tells me, "Well, I'm joining the postal service, so I know you have this fascination with mail, but that wasn't why you joined. People actually do still send letters,
Yep.
but was to get the fitness to then go on this walk. So Lisa has a GoFundMe page that is called Keep Me Posted, and
Today. It's
today,
keepmepostedtoday.com.
keepmepostedtoday.com. If you
Yeah.
haven't signed up or subscribed or donated, please do so. To date, I just got off the site. It has raised over $5,095. No surprise that you've already surpassed your goal of $3,000. And as Lisa
Hmm.
mentioned, she is walking from Los Angeles to New York City. It's a 130-day trek, probably plus or minus a few days. And what I'd love for you to share with people is paint the picture of just what inspired you to do that. That's just, it's got to be just an amazing story in itself.
So, um, I was going to do it during, like, before COVID, and it got pushed back and kept getting pushed back. And frankly, I wasn't ready. I still question today. Some days I don't feel as ready as I thought I would, but then I remember that mind over matter and mental fitness is 90% of it, and just my legs are just going to keep going until I tell it to stop. So it was really just more about, I just kept having conversations with people about mental fitness and suicide, and so many people I had met had some form of mental fitness challenges, like anxiety and depression, all the way to schizophrenia and bipolar. And I've met a narcissist in my life that I wasn't expecting. And out of all of that, everybody's got something. Everybody has something, and myself included. I know that I've had stress and anxiety and depression at times. How can you live in this world and not? We're so overworked and over um, extended in every way that it is stressful. And
Hmm.
even people who have got enormous wealth are struggling with something.
Yeah.
It's, different challenges. I have met very wealthy people who go through the same depression and anxiety.
I know in the real estate you've sold, you've just told me a few stories that people who had enormous amounts of money, especially in this city, to buy incredible places. And I have generally learned that it is more money, more problems, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing about suicide, right? It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care where your family comes from. It doesn't care what kind of a job you have, what's in your bank account. It doesn't care. Suicide is something that affects everybody.
Hmm.
Everybody. I've met people who have got nothing but the clothes on their back, walking along, walking on this trek. And I stayed at a hostel where some of the people were they were the nicest people. One lady, she cooked us all dinner. Like there was 8 or 9 of us, and she cooked us all this amazing pasta dinner with asparagus and tomatoes and protein, and it was so good. And I knew she couldn't afford it. I knew that like she wasn't working, but she did that and she paid it. It's like you do stuff for each other. And I was really, really felt blessed to be part of that and to be part of that little group for a couple of days. Well, one of the things I am doing that's really exciting is I'm walking miles in people's names. So if somebody has passed away from suicide, a loved one you've lost to suicide, let me know and I'll walk a mile in their name. I've just this morning somebody said that her brother had passed away in 1995. So my 1995th mile, I'm dedicating to her brother. My daughter's best friend, or one of her dear friends from middle school, a lady who I had not gotten to know as well as I would have liked to, but somebody that really was there for my daughter and her friends, um, committed suicide last year. She was born in 1972, so I'm walking my 1972nd mile for her. I was able to walk the fourth mile and the 24th mile for two twins that passed away within a year of each other. They both went to Notre Dame. Their dad was a player for the Oakland Raiders, and they all had CTE, you know. So I'm really truly getting to walk for and learning. Like I didn't realize that CTE was so closely connected with suicide, even though it's not talked about, and they try to say that it's not connected to suicide, but how many people are actually committing suicide or severely depressed because of that. So these are conversations that I really am getting to have that I wasn't expecting to learn so much from, because it truly is just something that is there's no rhyme or reason to it. Everybody has a different reason, you know.
Lisa, if you would, because I'm so curious about. We're pivoting here for a second. Talk to me about the simple logistics of planning something like this, because I can't even. When you told me you were walking across the country, you have to step back and go. You're walking across the country because you want to.
Yeah,
So talk to me.
yeah.
How do you plan something like that?
Um, you have to be very flexible and I think you have to learn to be the type of personality that is okay with things changing rapidly, or you have to stay put for a little bit. So during the election weekend, I stayed put for a couple of days, and in those days, I wasn't walking. I walked to the grocery store and stuff like that because I didn't have a vehicle. But some of the people I was staying with took me to Joshua Tree, and I was able to sleep under the stars that night. Um, just little things like that wasn't in my route. I wasn't meant to go in that direction. I was meant to go past another. I think it was. I can't even remember. It had the big dinosaurs, and I ended up not going by there, and ended up going through Hot Desert Springs and Joshua Tree, and being able to go there was something that I wasn't planning, and because I didn't have anything in place to where I was staying. I ended up staying at a hostel, and it was such a really good experience. It was very very basic. I slept in a bunk bed. I push a push cart. I got a double stroller, one of those double jogging strollers.
Oh my
I've named
gosh.
her, yep, I've named her Gertrude, and I filled her with everything. She carries my tent, my sleeping bag, everything you can imagine, my clothes, my big bag. I have the bug out bag, my tools, my hammock, my food, my water, everything you can imagine, she carries for me. And I push her along, and we just did. I just weighed her the other day. She's like 33 pounds on her own. No, 43 pounds on her own. And my backpack is 49 pounds. So pushing over 100 pounds across the country. And then people have been signing along the way. They sign the push. I call it a push cart, but they sign the stroller, and I'll send you a picture. It's quite cute and funny. But I put a sign on the front that says that I'm walking from Los Angeles to New York City with my website on it, and that gets people stopping. I actually had a gentleman yesterday on my walk come back twice. First of all, to double check that I was really walking from Los Angeles to New York City because did I read that right? And then asked me about what was going on. And I just kept walking. And then about 10 minutes up the road, he came back and he goes, "Hey, I wanted you to know that there's construction on the other side of the loop here, that you want to stay on this way. It's going to try that your GPS will tell you to go left, but keep going straight. And when you get to this location, then you can turn left and you'll still get there." And it was a little bit further out of the way, but at the same time, I didn't have to deal with construction. I was on this beautiful bike path which can take me 131 miles. So, but I can only do 22. 22 is my max so far. That's
You've
the
done
longest I've walked.
22 miles in one day?
Yeah, and I
Wow.
bawled like a baby. I ugly cried at the end of that day. I was miserable. My eyes were bloodshot because I didn't wear my sunglasses because they were bothering me, and it was really hot. I've got a tan. I'm a terrible Australian. I don't drink beer, I don't eat seafood, and I don't tan. And now I have a tan. So they might
let's
take me back.
let's keep it a tan, not a burn. That's for sure.
Yes,
So
yes,
that's so
definitely.
so that you're doing this grassroots, keeping it as low cost as possible.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the fact that you had a sleeping bag and a tent, you were ready to stay
Oh, yeah.
sleeping on the ground,
And and I
all the
have.
way.
And that night after the big ugly cry, it was Shiriako Summit. And it was just a big climb. It was a big day. I was exhausted. There was a museum there, the General Patton Museum was there, so I slept behind that in a little campground. And there was me and three RVs and the camp manager and one tent that looked like a teepee and my little one person tent. And I have a little camp stove that I can heat up water and pack it back up and carry it with me. And if I need to sleep outside, I'll sleep outside. People have been amazingly generous, though. I've been able to stay with people along the way. My West Point moms have been wonderful and offering places for me to stay. I'm staying with a friend's niece tonight for my rest day, so that's been wonderful. And I got to meet, one of my real estate coach. When I first got into Tucson, my real estate coach, or just outside of Tucson actually, he had introduced me years ago to a lovely lady called Veronica, and we'd never met except on Facebook. And she sent me a message saying, "Hey, when you get close to Tucson, you look like you're going to be walking about a mile from my house. You can come and stay with me." And I ended up staying with her for a couple of days. And I did my miles, and she came and picked me up where I finished and drove me back to her house and then dropped me back there in the next day. So I was able to continue walking and didn't lose any miles. And like people have just been amazing. People have donated hotel points for me. So I've been able to stay at hotels as well. Yeah, people have been amazing, and
Oh, That's
that's been really cool.
that's
Yeah.
great to
But I'm
hear.
doing this as frugally as possible because I'm not rich and and I'm not working. So this is my job right now.
Right. Wait. I thought the
Yeah.
Postal Service paid big bucks. That's not true.
No, we do it for love.
You do
But
it
I
for
do
love.
miss my customers. I joined the post office so that I could train. I wanted a job where I could walk 8 hours a day at least, and some days I did 13 hours a day. And I wanted to be able to work in all kinds of weather, and they certainly gave me that opportunity, and um, they were gracious enough to allow me the time off to be able to do this project, and here I am. So,
And
and I pop
th-
into any post office I get to see. I pop in and say hello. So,
uh, now,
yeah.
do you plan on returning to your postal job when you get back?
Yeah, I do
Wow.
because I really liked it. I really enjoy working with the people. I met so many cool people on my routes, and I was in Harlem, and I got to meet so many cool people, and everybody I talked about, like I'm about to walk across the country, and I was telling them why, and they would all be like, "Oh, this is such a great cause. This is so important." So they're all following me. I'm constantly getting text messages, "Where are you? How are you doing? Are you okay? What's going on? We love watching your stories." So it's been fun. It's been nice having people check in. Hmm.
And so when you're on a stretch, what's your average
Hmm.
miles per day that you're generally doing?
18 to 20 right
18 to
now.
20. My goodness.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's say you're on a stretch where there's nobody around. I'm sure you've had periods
yeah,
like this. What
yeah.
what what kind of thoughts, what are you thinking about when you go through?
Oh, yeah. That might be a book one day. You
Well, we
know,
can start it
when
now.
yeah, when you're alone with your thoughts, you do really have some pretty fun conversations with yourself, I guess. Yesterday I was on this particular stretch, and Arizona has come up with some challenges that I didn't think of. Like they have these javelina pigs, and apparently they're quite aggressive. And I didn't even know they existed. So I was like, okay, glad I know about this, and I'm glad that they only come out at night. But oh shit, what if I'm sleeping at night and a Cavallina pig comes around? So, having I practiced a couple of times just putting my food up. I bought a skipping rope with me, a jump rope with me, because it had a handle that if I needed to throw it over a tree branch, it was easier for me to do that. And I was like, okay. So practice that. The questions you have, can scorpions jump if you have to pee? You know, they cannot.
They
Uh,
cannot. Okay,
they
that's
cannot.
good. That's good.
Um, it's too cold for snakes right now, but being Australian, I'm kind of used to snakes and not scared of them, but have a healthy respect for what they can do. And I know the brighter the colors, the deadlier they are. So
Okay.
um, I'm just you've got to be aware of your surroundings. Just like living in New York City, I walk around with one earphone on instead of two. Always able to hear something and keep my peripheral vision sharp and make sure that I'm always aware of what's going on. If I walk past somebody that looks a little dodgy, I don't, I've seen a lot of addiction issues on my walk. I've seen a lot of people struggling with addiction on the side of the road and on the sidewalks. And it's sad to see, but I try not to engage with them and just walk past as quickly as I can, um, for safety reasons. But then I've sat with people at a bus stop where I'm taking a break, and there's a shady bus stop, and somebody will sit down and have a conversation with me, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to get clean," and we talk about it.
Right.
And it's you never know what you're coming up against. Every day is different.
Have you
Yeah.
had anybody along the way that just in hearing about your causes decided to just on the spot to donate or
Yeah.
do something?
Yeah, this gentleman just asked, "Can I donate?" And I said, "Absolutely." I gave him my website, and he goes, "Well, can I give you cash?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." I try not to carry cash with me because, I don't want to be robbed. And he goes, "Well, go buy yourself some lunch." And he handed me some money, and that was really lovely. And
Oh,
he said, "Go have some lunch on me." So that was really, really sweet. Um, But mostly it's just people just offering their support and, making sure that I'm okay, checking in.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
some fun questions, if you will? What was the worst weather day you've had to walk in so far?
Shiriako Summit. It rained that night, so I did my 22 miles. I ugly cried. I just had a day. And I got to the bottom that day. And then the next day, I knew I had to go all the way up the summit. And I was camping that night. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then it started raining. And it was deathly silent. And living in New York City, when it's really quiet, something's wrong. Yeah, so it was deathly quiet. You couldn't hear anything. And then the rain. I could hear my own heartbeat. And then I
Oh,
could hear the rain. It was that quiet. And it was cloudy and I was already grumpy. I couldn't see the planets aligning. I'm like, I'm out in the middle of absolutely nowhere and I cannot see the sky. I was just really grumpy that day. So that's probably one of the grumpiest days I've had. But every other day's been pretty good. Like the days that I've had to sleep outside, it's been fine. I've got a solar charger for my phone, so I can keep everything going. If
right.
somebody wants to give me advice on how to use the drone, that would be great because I've got a little drone that was gifted to me and I don't know how to use it.
Well, what would the
Yeah.
drone be for?
So that it'll follow me and it'll be actually able to get a little bit more footage so that I can shoot where I am and what I'm doing and post that just so it's a little bit more interesting and I can see what's ahead of me.
Okay, okay,
That's a
that's pretty
plus.
cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Now that would be a lot to do is walk and fly the drone at the same time when you're
Yeah,
focused on
that's something I
something.
have to maybe do on my next rest day because I can't do it at night because I'll lose the drone. I have no idea where it would go. And during the day, I'm really just trying to use as much daylight as I can to get
Yeah,
as many miles in as I can. And
yeah,
yesterday was a good day, but I stopped a lot for conversations as well. So I do enjoy the days where I've got really long stretches so I can get more miles in. But
right.
the days where I get to less miles is because I've had more conversations.
Right. Well, knowing you
Yeah.
as I do, it's probably a
Yeah.
blessing and a curse because you epitomize. Lisa could literally talk to a doorknob and make the doorknob somehow speak to her and have the doorknob laughing at some
Yeah.
point, right?
We used
That's
to
why
always joke I could sell ice to Eskimos and yeah. Yep.
that is the biggest compliment. When I imagine when you're looking at a mountain like that, because I haven't done a lot of walking, but I've done a lot of cycling. And
Hmm.
when you look at something that is this massive obstacle, it especially with the point of your walk, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about you're dealing with a few things. You're like, I got to climb this giant thing, and
Yeah.
then maybe what creeps into your head when you're thinking about mental fitness.
Yeah, that you just have to find your grit and you just have to keep going. And thank goodness it felt like a gradual climb, like it was a big climb, but it was steady. It wasn't like, you know, straight uphill and do I need to pull my cart instead of push it? Like I was having visions of, am I going to have to put a rope around my cart and pull it behind me? And, you know, but it wasn't. It was a nice steady climb and comfortable enough, as far as a climb that big can go. But you just have to dig in and you just have to say, okay, I've got to do this because I'm either going to sleep halfway up the hill or I'm going to sleep at the top.
Right.
And, there's a rest stop there and I stopped at the rest stop. I was grateful that they had a bathroom. It's the little things. You're like, oh, public restroom, yay. There are not
and,
things that in my 50 years I ever thought that I would be excited about, but small gestures.
and there was a key line you just said. Knowing you always have to finish at the top, and I say that in such a
Yeah,
complimentary way.
thank
Were
you.
there ever any days that you, even for a moment, just said, "What am I doing? I can't do this anymore."
I think every morning I wake up and I'm like, what the hell did I bite off? And then I'm like, okay, this is what I bit off. And I think I got to that point before I left was I was so sick of telling everyone I was going to do it. And I really do enjoy telling people I am doing it. And that was my switch for me was like, okay, I'm here. And again, that comes with resilience, right? Again, mental fitness, it's all about resilience. It's all about just getting through and relying. I find it really hard to ask for help. I'm how you have those people that have people. Well, I'm the people that people have is usually the role I fall into. And it's really hard for me to ask for that help. And when Becky said to me, just call my niece would love to host you. And I was just like, oh, but I don't know your niece. Like you, sometimes it's, taking away your own ego and just saying, hey, all right, I'm doing this, you know. So, and being vulnerable myself has been a challenge, and I'm learning how to do that.
So I'm sure the vulnerability of like, okay, I'm out in the middle of nowhere is, and you're
Yeah,
just you. You're just you, right? You're just a person
yeah,
walking along
it's
a
just
road.
me.
So
Yeah,
that's really a lot.
yeah,
What states do you have coming up on your route? Because I'm trying to think if I know anyone
yeah.
along your
Oh
path
yeah.
that's coming
If
through.
people of if your listeners know of people and they're good people, let me know. Keep me posted on that because I would love to meet new people. I'm New Mexico, Texas, Georgia, Alabama. Um, am I going through Oklahoma? I can't remember if I'm going through Oklahoma or not. And that's the other thing too, that the route really truly does change based on how the weather's looking and what's going on.
Mm.
My first week, I had a whole group of people planned that I was going to stay with coming out of LA, and the fires happened the day after I landed. So I was supposed to start my walk on the 7th, and the fires happened. And so I couldn't start where I was going to be starting. I had to detour there. I had to completely reroute to get to where I was going. So I'll also be going through South Carolina, North Carolina, Delaware, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York. Or not Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and New York. Yeah. I'm trying to be pretty frivolous. So if somebody offered me a ride 2 hours away, I would absolutely take it because that saves me 4 days, but only on rest days. And I try not to do that too often. But my friend who was in Phoenix, she's like, hey, listen, it gets a little dicey on the outskirts, and I don't particularly think it's safe for you to walk there. So she did get me closer to Tucson, which really did save me a lot of time and agita. And driving through it, I was like, ooh, there really is nothing, between here and there. It's very desolate. And for those days, you have to really choose. Like, it's like, okay, do I have my emergency supply of ramen? Do I have, so I've learned I can get some fresh soup. I can add ramen to it, heat it up in my camping stove, and I've got a nice, good filling meal. Um, and I always make sure I've got some fresh fruit and vegetables, at least, and I've seen some orange trees. I've picked some good oranges and I've picked some terrible oranges and but as I go along, I always try to make sure I pick up one or two pieces of fruit. And as I plan on my rest days, I try to plan the next 5 days out, and I rest every 5 days if I can.
How many
So,
pairs of shoes do you expect to go through on this whole journey?
I'm almost at 500 miles now. So my first pair of shoes, I've got two pairs of shoes that I'm working with right now that I alternate. So once they both hit 500 miles, I'll be getting some more. And so I try to buy a new pair and break them in for like a couple of hours each day. And then I move on to the next pair and throw away or I'll give the old pair to a homeless person if I see them, or throw them away if they're completely trashed.
Tell me, Lisa, what with all the money that you're going to raise, where are you going to send that to, so our listeners can feel great
So
about that?
some of it's to help me get through the journey as frugally as I can. I did meet a lady along the way who couldn't get into a shelter. She was crying. She couldn't get into a shelter. She had two kids with her, and I got her a hotel room at the Super 8 that was close by for a night. It wasn't very expensive, and I was able to do it. And she thanked me profusely for that. And so anything I can do to help people, I will do, as long as they're safe. Um, if people want to donate to a certain charity, I'm more than happy to do that as well. If they say, "Hey, I want to donate to this," I encourage that. Day before, I started the Mission 22 challenge, which is a 48-mile ruck that has its own separate fundraising that doesn't go to me at all. That just goes straight to Stop Soldier Suicide.
Okay.
But my GoFundMe is for me to be able to help. The more money I raise, the more I can help. I would love to be able to get to the point where I can walk through a small town and see if they don't have a therapist or a school social worker, that I'd be able to say, "Hey, I've got enough money in our fund. Here's $35,000 to give you a teacher salary, and let's work with a grant program to be able to keep that in your budget."
Oh,
I'd love to be able to do scholarships for kids to go to college to be therapists and social workers. They're not doing that anymore. They're not the career paths that people are choosing, and they're the career paths that we really need filled. We don't have enough people doing that. Everyone's going into finance and influencing, and um, nothing against those things. It all makes the world go round, but we need people on the ground to be supporting people that need the help.
sure. Well, what
So,
worthy causes. In our sort of pre discussion before this, I had asked you any sort of meaningful anecdotes because you always teach me something, and then we'll close out with the sort of
mhm.
the big takeaway that our listeners can
Yeah.
learn from.
So I listened to a gentleman who was talking on social media a couple of months ago, and he was talking about 8 minutes, and that it takes 8 minutes for somebody to feel that connection with somebody if they're struggling. So instead of just saying, "How are you doing?" and just replying, "Okay," if you're not okay, say, "I need 8 minutes." And that's a cue for somebody to just drop everything, no matter what they're doing. You can step out of a meeting for 8 minutes. You can, whatever you need to do, you can stop what you're doing for 8 minutes and say, "Hey, I got your message. I've got 8 minutes. Let's talk." And then by the end of that 8 minutes, organize a time to finish the conversation. But generally takes 8 minutes for that person to get out of that state of mind and to be able to still be like, "Okay, I'm not by myself in this. I'm okay."
Oh, that's
So,
amazing.
to text somebody 8 minutes. So if I was to say to one of my friends that knows about this, and they say, "How are you doing?" and I'd say, "I need 8 minutes," they would call me immediately. Like, and to me, that's something that's like so simple. And it's just, and you might just be there to listen for 8 minutes. It might not be to offer any advice. It might be, I just need to cry and not cry by myself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's just that 8 minutes of contact with somebody that you trust and you feel safe with. And I feel like if everyone can just keep that as a tool that they have in their little pocket of, "Okay, I can help somebody," it takes 8 minutes. So I love that. That's, yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And I hope
And
anybody listening, if there's one thing you take that, because everybody's got 8 minutes they can spare in their
yeah,
life, right? Stop
yeah.
looking at your Facebook feed. You can handle eight
I
minutes,
know.
and give that to somebody
Exactly.
else.
Yeah.
Well, I want to, as we head to a final takeaways, I obviously want to thank you so much. But we close up each episode of the Turnaround Artist because you truly are turning things around. You turned your life around. You turned your children's life around. You've turned around countless others. In many ways, you've helped me turn my life around, especially with even this discussion. I'm honored to say this is your first podcast ever. So
It
deep,
is.
deeply touched by that. What's the message you really want to leave? We want to check in with you on the way. So I hope we can have some
Of
future
course.
discussions.
Yeah. I think it's chunk it down one step at a time. You know, you're a lot more resilient than you thought you were, or that you have the capacity to be a lot more resilient than you think you are. Um, Resilience isn't about just about pushing through. It's really about the mental side of it, the physical side is easy once you've made up your mind to do it. You can push through, um, and embrace vulnerability. Embrace that vulnerability and prioritize small things, like chunk it down. Don't If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a breath and and let those feelings pass. A lot of people, a friend of mine was really upset recently, and was just kept going on and on and on about it. And I was like, it's okay, but don't hang on to it. Don't hang on to it. Like, it's good and healthy to have these feelings. It's really important to acknowledge the feelings that you're having. Be angry, be sad, be whatever you need to be in that moment. Don't stay there. Don't
Yeah.
stay there. Push through. I wake up, my hips don't work. I'm 50 years old. You know, my hips aren't like they were when I was in my 20s. I could just stand up and stand down. I sit down for too long now, my hips hurt. I walk for too long, my feet hurt. So it's now just learning to adjust to all of that sort of stuff, and be kind to myself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I even carry along a little bucket that's a collapsible bucket that I can soak my feet in Epsom salts at the end of the day, whether I'm camping or I'm out at somebody's home or I'm in a hotel room. I always take the time to take care of myself. And I think if we all did that and just took just an hour for ourselves, just to really realign and recalibrate ourselves, I think we'd be a much healthier society. How am I actually feeling today? And
Yeah.
ask yourself that question, be really honest about it. And if you're feeling like shit, say, I'm feeling like shit, and then
Mm.
figure out why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't just brush it aside. Everybody says we're okay. I'm fine, I'm okay, when you're really not. And that's not helping anyone either, because then everyone thinks you're okay. So you're giving all these people this false narrative of who you are. Be yourself.
Mm.
Everyone else is taken. Be you,
I love that.
you
I
know?
love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I've taken so much from this. Please go to Lisa's
Yeah.
GoFundMe and
Well, just my web
donate.
page, because my website is not just about the GoFundMe. The website's got other things as well. So it's keepmepostedtoday.com. And that's got so many things. You can follow where I have been. You can see my general route on there, but it deviates, and it's very loose. But they can they can donate. They can ask me to walk a mile in people's names. It doesn't cost anything to walk a mile in somebody's name. That's just something I'm doing. If they want to just call me and schedule a call, they can schedule a call with me and just talk.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like crap today. Okay, sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger, because they're not judging. So, and please say hi to 945 for me.
I will say hi to
Yay.
945. You are dearly missed in this building. This podcast is apparently has gained a lot of traction in this building. So
Yay.
once I get the episode done, I think you'll people will be really happy to hear from you.
Well, a
So
special shout out to 945, and thank you all for being so gracious with my friends who are babysitting my house for me while I'm walking.
you
So,
got it. You got it. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. I'm so
thank you.
supportive of the cause. I will make sure I make a donation right after this call,
Thank
and we'll stay in touch along the way.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right. You too, Lisa. Take care now.
Have a good one. Take
Have a
care.
good ride.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.